All right, the big question here on Wednesday, February 19th, 2025, just a few days away from Major League Soccer's kickoff weekend, the 30th season for the existing Division One league here in the United States. So we're going to shift our minds, get into Major League Soccer mode, to dig into some preseason predictions, and we're going to start today with the Eastern Conference.
Yeah, there's 30 teams. You can't do it all in one shot. It just feels like it's too much. So we're going to do the East today, and we'll do the West on Friday. And I'm not even going to waste any time. And Robert, I didn't ask you to prepare your predictions because I know you're still learning. You're still catching back up on MLS. I didn't want to put you on the spot. Here are mine. Now, it is an annual tradition when you work in soccer media in America to make MLS predictions that you know will be entirely wrong. Every single one of them is likely to be wrong. You can just toss it out. But we all pretend that we know what's going to happen.
With putting this graphic up, you're in danger of becoming one of those end-of-season lame posts where the overachieving team throws out all the people that predicted them to come in the bottom three or whatever. So you're sticking your head out there a little bit.
There is this weird reciprocal media thing that happens where MLS soccer.com, sorry, that's what I call it, MLSsoccer.com will post their predictions from various experts, all their people that work there. So basically nowadays, it's all the MLS season pass talent that post their predictions. And then what'll happen is a team will screenshot it or they'll grab it and they'll make hay on social media like, oh, look at this person who thinks we're going to finish last. And then obviously later in the year when that person is wrong, because you're always wrong in MLS on some level, they get to say, look, we proved them wrong. But to me, it never really rings all that powerfully because people are wrong. MLS is extremely unpredictable. It is it's what it is. But I'm doing it anyway. I'm going out on the limb. So here are my predictions. I will, I guess, start at the top, right? Inter Miami. I am not going to be the person who loses by betting against Lionel Messi. I'm just not going to do it. Until it's proven that he is cooked, until it's proven that Mascherano can't handle this, which maybe he can't. I have doubts. Don't get me wrong. I have doubts. I'm going to have to pick Inter Miami first. Last year, they ran away with it. So, why wouldn't you have them number one? I got Cincinnati number two. They have obviously made a big addition in Evander, switching out for Lucho Acosta. That team is well run now, and they have a manager who understands the league. So I think Cincinnati is a good bet for number two. Atlanta United makes a jump from 9th to 3rd from last year for me because they spent money, right? They went out and they got the pieces necessary, and they've got a coach now in Ronnie Deila who understands how to win too.
So you don't think they're going straight to the top, Atlanta?
No, I think that's too big of a jump. I still think that there will be a couple teams that will finish above them, but I can see them making a big leap.
Yeah, it looks
Orlando
like
City at number 4. You can't look at any team in a vacuum, right? So you can't look at a team who made some additions or made some changes or did some things in the transfer market in the winter and say, well, just because they did those things, they're going to move up 2 or 3 spots without taking into consideration what everybody else is doing around them, good or bad, right? But certainly most teams are trying to get better. Am I wrong about that? Most teams are trying to improve, or
it seems that way. There was quite a few teams that completely overhauled, shipped out a dozen or so players and completely brought in a dozen new players. So there definitely seems to be effort. There's not as many teams where you think that they're just kind of going to the next season just to exist.
Yeah, so in the case of Orlando, obviously Luis Muriel did not pan out the way they wanted to, and they did have some departures this offseason, but they added Marco Pasalic. I think Duncan McGuire's good for double-digit goals again this year. They added Atuesta, formerly of LAFC, to their midfield. So I think that, and I think Ladero's out, and I believe he's going to be moving on to Houston. But whatever. There's some movement there, but I still think Orlando has a smart manager in Oscar Brejan. They'll be competitive. Columbus, big outgoing name in Cucho Hernandez. But as long as Wilfred Nancy is there and they still have, some decent pieces, and we know that they do have players who know this league and can thrive in this league, I think they'll be competitive. The Red Bulls make a little bit of a move up the table after last year. but not dramatically.
That's in stark contrast to our guest Dave Gass. He was saying that he was thinking that New York Red Bulls is going to be one of the top teams.
No, I think stark contrast. I mean, again, we're talking about an issue of 5, 6, 7 points, depending on how the season plays out. Could Inter Miami run away with it again? Sure, but from 2nd to 6 could be 5 or 6 points. In the end. So this is why probably I'm going to be wrong, right? Because you just 1 or 2 victories, 1 or 2 different results, and things switch a little bit. Columbus in 5th here could vary. This is more like a ceiling floor kind of thing than anything else. Right, fair. Miami's ceiling is 1st. Miami's floor is probably 4th. Cincinnati ceiling is 1st, floor 5th, 6th at the lowest in my mind. Right, so New York Red Bulls, their ceiling could be 3rd, but their floor could be 9th. Yeah, like I don't think there's a range there. Charlotte outing Wilfried Zaha. We're all excited about Ajamang. What can he do? I've got Chicago rather. In the playoff field, in one of the wild card spots. I'm not the only one.
Confidence.
Not the only one. I've seen some people put Chicago but this is also, I think, a reflection of just how everybody else below them isn't very good or has not taken a big step forward or in some cases has taken a step back. So Nashville in 9th getting the last playoff spot. That could be NYCFC. That could be DC United. That could be even Philadelphia, right? The gap between Chicago, because I think Charlotte will be decent to make the playoffs, but the gap between Chicago all the way down to Philly is pretty small in terms of how this could play out. And we will have that down to the wire race for those spots. Philly's taking a step back. Bradley Carnell has managed in this league before, but will he be able to get enough out of them? The way that Jim Curtin got sort of extra levels of effort out of the Union despite not having the best talent every season. The Revs, I just can't see the Revs making a big step forward. I mean, they're just going to be in that same zone that they were last year. They turned over a lot of that roster. I like Leo Campana a lot, but he's not going to carry them to a playoff spot. And then, sadly, Canada. Canada just looks terrible. Both teams in Canada, I mean, Toronto's worse than Montreal in my mind, but it's not that big of a difference, and I don't see either one of those teams doing much this season. Any beefs with my picks, Robert?
Maybe a little bit surprised. I mean, not ultimately surprised that Toronto. I don't think they're going to be dead last. I think they're going to be bad, but I don't necessarily think they're going to be dead last. I'm surprised to see Chicago.
Who's worse? Who's worse than Toronto? Because that's what it is. Not Toronto good. No. Who's worse than Toronto?
I mean, that's fair. Maybe New England or Montreal. I mean, the bottom 3 is probably accurate. I didn't necessarily think just because of maybe the Italian guys get it together in Toronto. Maybe the coaching improves and they climb a little bit. But my only real surprise is I thought that you'd have the Red Bulls a little bit higher. NYCFC maybe is a little bit low. Maybe switch them in DC, but I mean it's parsing hairs. I would maybe switch Atlanta and Cincinnati for the 2 and 3, but that seems based on what we've seen in the moves on the offseason and how they finished last year. This seems like a sound prediction. I don't think you're going to get your head chopped off at the end of the season by anyone unless the Toronto somehow has some night and day switch of form, but this seems generally spot on.
I think the only place where maybe I would second guess myself a bit is I could be underrating Charlotte a little bit. Dean Smith had a good first season. That there's hope there, and again, they're sort of maturing, and they've added potentially a piece in Zaha, which I think we said if they get 8-10 out of Zaha, 8 goals, 10 assists. I mean, maybe not double digits, 8 and 8, I think, out of Zaha.
That would go a long way.
They take a step forward, and maybe they're 4th instead of 7th, something like that.
And his influence on Ajamang is going to be interesting to see how that progresses. And I do like, from the comments, Nate with something funny. Chicago haven't finished as high as 7th or 8th since 1907, right?
Something like that.
I can't remember. In this century, maybe. If they've done so, maybe not. Definitely not in this decade.
Yeah, I mean, not that it's been so long since the Fire have mattered in any way that it almost feels weird, right? You almost want to, like, wait a second, I'm actually going to put the Fire in the playoff field? No, I don't know. I mean, but look, Houston did it. They made the jump. It was Houston and Chicago who hadn't made the playoffs since I think 2015, and Houston got better, right? They
sure did.
they improved. Now they're having to hit the reset button a little bit with two of their most influential players in Hector Herrera and Coco Carrasquilla gone, but they've done what you need to do. They brought in Jack McGlynn. There's word on the street that Nico Ladero is going to sign there. So they're making some pushes to try to fill in. And again, what is also something that you cannot predict right now, not just like, oh, at the end of the season. All of this is based on what these teams look like right now. It's a little bit of last year. Like, okay, last year they did X. And then you say, well, they made this addition, or they signed this player, or they spent this much money. All right, well, I'm going to move them either up or down in some cases. What we don't know is what the summer brings in terms of roster changes. Who's going to go and make a big move? Who's going to add a piece? Who's going to make a transfer play that's going to add goals and really change the complexion of these teams when we get into the summer months? Because it's almost like two different seasons. In fact, MLS has probably 5 seasons, but it's almost like 2 different seasons. And so maybe we revisit this in July and go, well, are we changing anything? Not just based on the standings as they sit, but sort of as teams make changes to their rosters.
You said the season's in half. It is kind of almost like a disclaimer for folks that maybe might be digging into Major League Soccer for the first time this year. Like, I would put a disclaimer out there that what you see in this first few weeks or a month is not reflective of what these teams will be on the long term. But I'd almost push back on the halves. It almost seems like thirds, in my opinion. There's the opening, getting, de-thawing of teams in the first third, dog days of summer, and then playoff push into postseason are kind of like the segments that I would throw out there in my mind. And the audience kind of changes through the course of that too. People might not tune into that early part of the season, and then in the summer there's a lot more eyeballs when the Major League Soccer's only competing with baseball, and then things kind of shift in the fall again when football and the other major sports kick back in again. So kind of the dynamics shift over this long season in general.
Yeah.
As we kind of wrap this Eastern Conference prediction preview up, is there any final notes before we get out of here?
No, I don't think Inter Miami sets a points record like they did last year. I don't think that's going to happen. I think they'll win, or they'll finish first in the East, but I don't think they're going to be dominant in the same kind of way. There will be some things that will happen between now and I mean, let's also remember that the primary transfer window is still open. So there are some things that could happen before we even, once we're into the season. So, very much like you sort of wait for that window to close when the Premier League's already underway. It's the same deal here. And could there be some movement that will change the complexion of these teams? Sure. But we got to make predictions. Part of the job.
One final shout from the MK Ultras in the chat. Fun little comment. Thomas Dupree, Villages FC disagrees. Villages FC aren't finishing first again.
All right. We'll see. I mean, again, bet against Messi at your own risk. I get it. I understand why. I said I have concerns. How will Mascherano handle this?
Agree.
Will the bodies hold up? Will the Busquets and the Messis and the Suarezes hold up? Those are real, legitimate things for Miami to worry about. But you look at what they did last year, and yes, a year older, but it's always hard to know when that fall is going to happen, when the drop off the table is going to come for any particular player or for an aging team.
Yeah, when will it come? Will it be this year? Who knows, but definitely a tough bet to go against Messi. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in this morning. If you haven't clicked subscribe yet, please be the next to do so, and then tell your family and friends to do the same. We are on the march to 1,000 and beyond subscribers, so join the MK Ultras, join the movement, and help us become one of the centers of the American soccer conversation. Also, follow us along on social media at MKickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And you can support us with a little bit of dinero, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround, one time or a regular donation. Anything will help out here on the show. All right, full afternoon of soccer games today, and we will come back on Friday to talk about that and more on Morning Kickaround. Until then, enjoy your soccer.